All right, guys, welcome to Thinking Property. My name is Jonathan Rydell. I'm your host. And today we're going to be talking about the CPI and what the Fed sees in the overall economy. So, I actually have an article up by MSNBC talking about this. And let me go ahead and throw it up onto your screen. As you can see, the CPI, which is watched closely by the Federal Reserve, increased 0.3% for the month when excluding food and energy, which was close to the Dow Jones estimate. And the PCE increased 4.6 from a year ago, which is zero point 0.1 less than expected. Now, a lot of people would say that this is a good thing because of the fact that the inflation rate is down from where it was expected to be, but still up 4.6% from a year ago. Some of the other things that you'll see as well is that when you do include food and energy, inflation was much softer than what it would have been, only up 3.8% from a year ago. And we all know that we need food and we need transportation with fuel. So if you put that number, it's a realistic number of 3.8% inflation. That is the numbers that we're looking at right now. So with me is my twin brother to bring analysis for this and to talk about what this does to the market overall. Please welcome my twin brother, Blake Riddell. Blake, thank you for being here.
Hey there, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, doing well.
Yeah.
So, can you go ahead and actually break down a couple of the numbers and what this means to average Americans, people who are working and, going paycheck to paycheck or with very little savings? What do you see in regards to what the economy is doing right now?
Well, the first thing overall that I see is the fact that the economy is definitely slowing down. So, for example, I'm not sure if you mentioned this in your stats, but in those numbers, the Fed actually found that the savings rate rose to 4.6%, meaning that more people are saving their money, which is suggesting that maybe American consumers are being a little bit more cautious with what they're spending on. So they're kind of reining in a lot of those spending habits. They're not necessarily using some of those extra funds to go out or to buy a new car, things like that. I also noticed that car sales were a little bit down for the month of May. So typically, whenever I look at the economy, you look at car sales. And if car sales are doing good, that means that people have some residual income that they're willing to part ways with to have a little bit nicer of a vehicle. But when car sales kind of, I don't want to say flatline, but when they slowed down the way that they did through the month of May, to me, that is just telling me that, you know, potentially the economy isn't as strong as you might predict. Now, with that being said, some of those numbers that you were talking about, I personally think they are really good because of the fact that inflation is slowing down. You know, the past year or so, inflation typically has been at about 8%, which is four times what the Fed aims for. They try to aim for typically a 2% annual inflation rate. So now we're looking at 4%. Is that good? Historically, no, it's not really good, but at least it's slowing down from where it was. We're no longer at that 8%. We're looking at 4%. And the average price of goods that consumers are purchasing aren't rising as fast as they were previously. So it's kind of a
Yeah,
mixed
and
bag. Not great, not bad.
yeah, and let me ask you this though, when comparing the inflation numbers overall to again the amount of wage growth, do they offset? Or are Americans basically, in essence, poorer than what they were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because of the fact that the price of goods is up, but the amount of money that they make has stayed the same or relatively risen at a slower rate than inflation? What do you think about that?
It's hard to say exactly. There has been wage growth, but as you've seen, it's been, 0.1%, 0.2%, and that is adjusted for inflation. So, you know, if we're looking at it month by month, the economy is definitely stabilized, but compared to maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the economy definitely isn't as strong as what it used to be. Inflation definitely was a little bit taxing, especially on those that are middle class, right? Because that means all of their goods went up, which meant the cost of living went up. and yet for most people their wages didn't increase. So yeah, overall, if you compare the economy to where it was a few years back, it's definitely in a weaker position, but I wouldn't say that we're in a disastrous scenario yet. That definitely could be the outcome depending on how the numbers continue to move, but I would like to say that the economy is stable, but it's kind of stagnant as well.
I was going to say stable and stagnant are so close to each other, right? I mean, you could say that it's stable and that it's definitely leveling to a place where it can be healthy for the next couple of years. But then you hear a lot of people, especially people like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, people who are renowned in the world of finance and business saying that we're on the verge of recession. It's really remarkable to see what's happening there. And just like you added, when you see that some of this wage growth is 0.1% and 0.2 of a percent, I mean that's really pennies on a dollar if you ask me. I mean when something like that's happening and you have massive inflation amounts, and really this isn't just the past year, so year over year, right now, 365 days ago, yeah, it's up 4%. But you got to keep in mind that last year at the same exact time from the year prior, it was up nearly what, 7%. So
Yeah.
that is a massive change in the market of where it was, for real wages to where it is now. It's amazing. Do you think that we're going to be into a recession though? Is this something that could happen?
So it just kind of depends. Everybody has their own personal opinion on where we're going to end up. I was reading an article the other day on Yahoo News that half of economists are saying, "Oh, this is great. We've had that soft landing that the Fed Reserve has been kind of aiming for." And then I've heard that the other half are saying, "Well, wait, hold on a second. These problems that we're having are just beginning." I'm in the opinion somewhere in the middle that our economy is strong. The American consumer is still, strong historically compared to other countries and other areas. Um, but with that being said, I don't think we're as strong as we should be or could be. And it just really depends on how much money the United States government and the Fed continues to print. Because if we're looking at, 6 trillion, 7 trillion, 8 trillion, just statistically speaking, there has to continue to be inflation. It can't be held at bay forever. But if we
Yep.
eventually cut our budget, whatever, cut it down or at least keep it the same, you know, maybe things will stabilize. But I'm of the opinion that the politicians in Washington love to print money. So we're going to continue to see inflation as they do so.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree there. Actually, Jerome Powell was recorded about a week ago saying that he is looking to probably bump up rates until that soft landing, maybe even a hard landing comes. And then some people were analyzing this and saying that there are fears that there could be recessions. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yep.
We know that as much as recessions hurt the average American, it does reset the economy usually, right? Does it not? Because when you look at all of the money that is out there floating around right now, that devalues the dollar. But suddenly, when you take out a few trillion and you take it and you get it away from the consumer, it hurts initially, but it should stabilize prices.
It should stabilize prices. And I wanted to kind of add on to what you just said about Jerome Powell potentially leaving rate hikes still on the table. That leads me to think that these numbers were a little bit better than what they expected because typically they stop raising rates whenever they're able to take money out of the economy. And unfortunately for us, they look at job numbers. If job numbers have continued to grow, and they did continue to grow. And so they're looking at jobs, they're looking at the overall economy and the overall consumer. So yeah, they see that it's slowing down, but for them, it's not slowing down quick enough to really tamp out, the inflation. So yeah, it's weird because we had conflicting reports a few weeks ago that rate hikes are off the table for at least the next year. And then we get these numbers back. They're relatively decent. And they go, you know what? Rate hikes are still on the table. So I think these were a little bit stronger than what they were expecting. But also, they're still looking at that soft landing as far as it comes to inflation. they're never going to get it unless they stop printing money. That's a bottom line.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I think that the politicians in Washington don't recognize how serious this truly is. And you're right, they look at the job market, they look to see how many jobs are floating around. And in the past, I believe 4 months, over 1 million jobs created. So, a very weird time that we live in where you have jobs and the unemployment rate going down and inflation going upwards. Maybe it's because of all that extra money sitting around where corporations can hire more people without really feeling the repercussions. Absolutely. Well, Blake, thank you so much for breaking this down. I thought that the numbers were enlightening as well, and we'll see what they do the next couple of meetings to see if they really will raise rates. Blake, thank you for being here.
Fingers crossed. Thank you. Have a good one, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.